all and end all. From above derived all reasons for what happens below, and everything below must in turn be aligned to the above. Every thought and thing had to be judged as to whether it led upward. Only this resolute striving for the true foundation of all things can explain Evola's many nearly incomprehensible judgments and outlooks. His first aim was to turn toward transcendence and be liberated from earth. Hence his constant attacks on chthonic religions, because they are terrestrial cults and not celestial religions. In these terrestrial cults, the earth is the great mother, and she alone has priority since she gives protection and help. Heaven, which in practically all cultures is regarded as male because it makes the womb of the earth fertile through sun and rain, is therefore in those cults nearly insignificant beside her. And if one worships the earth, striving upward for heavenly transcendence is of no avail. Evola's path, however, is neither a search for consolation nor an abandonment of the self to the mother goddess with its consequent loss of the self. For Evola, the earthly is not the path that leads to active liberation, to awakening. On the contrary, it strengthens the sleep in which one gropes to return to the mother's womb. Evola values only the continuum of consciousness, the enduring presence, and the awakening of the thousand eyes as the essentials for achieving liberation. What Jocelyn Godwin wrote about René Guénon is also true of Evola's esoteric work. Mystical experience and religious devotion are certainly intrinsic elements of the spiritual path, but as Guénon never tired of emphasizing, the ultimate realization of a human being is through knowledge. Some may find this whole approach too intellectual, but they cannot deny that the traditionalist discipline of metaphysics cuts like a razor through the sloppy thinking and sentimentality prevalent among New Age types. It sets standards of integrity against which other spiritual teachings either stand or fall. It assumes from the outset that the absolute truth has always been there for the finding, so that it has no time for the fumblings of Western philosophy, so-called, nor for a science whose basic dogma is that man is still searching for the truth. And it incidentally forces a revaluation of all the modern ideals that most North Americans take for granted, such as individualism, equality, evolution, and progress. One looks at the world with new eyes once one has passed through a traditionalist re-education." Unquote. Since the chthonic, or earth religions, go hand in hand with mother cults and their feminine leadership, Evola saw every matriarchal culture as further evidence of deterioration. It was neither misogyny nor patriarchism that led him to this, but simply an intense striving for liberation from earthly bondage. In his eyes, this liberation is all that matters. Everything else is meaningless alongside it. To achieve this goal, no sacrifice is too great for him. Even one's own death becomes a triumphal death, insofar as one is aware of it as a sacrifice undergone for this liberation. Who perishes in battle in this spirit is godly, because for him the outer struggle is merely a symbol for the inner struggle against enslavement to earth. It is only from such a viewpoint that today we can grasp Evola's acceptance of the Hindu practice of sati. He sees it as the highest of devotions, precisely because it places perfect purity of purpose ahead of mere greed for life. So asceticism is for Evola not a woeful and painful stifling of unlived passion, but simply a technique for setting the self free, a conscious step undertaken because one is aware of the higher. He does not trust in grace and waiting, but wants to liberate himself through his own power. Consciousness therefore precedes unconsciousness, and to avoid any misunderstanding, Evola sharply differentiates the idea of higher consciousness from lower consciousness. A crystal-clear wakefulness characterizes the first, and surrender and self-sacrifice the latter. This is why Evola so often warns us about spiritualism and the usual occult streams. These, he maintains, quoting Guénon, are even more dangerous than materialism. Quote, "Because of its primitivity and intellectual short-sightedness," unquote, materialism protected men from their own unconsciousness. In this regard, Guénon pointed out